I think so.
Good morning. When I think of purposeful faith, I am reminded of Pop and the Youthville televisions. Several years ago, Mom and Pop and I went out to Salina for the Uniting Conference that was called to bring together Kansas East, Kansas West, and the Nebraska annual conferences. On the way to our motel room, we passed by 8 motel room-sized television sets sitting right in the hallway. Mom and I were thinking about conference, already engaged in conference, doing all the pre-conference checklists in our heads. We walked right on by. But Pop stopped, and he looked at those televisions for a minute, and then he said, "I wonder if they have any further use for these." Mom and I went back to try to see what he saw. And I said, "Pop, what do you have in mind?" He said, "If these people don't have a use for the TVs, do you think Youthville would? And if I can get them, and if Youthville wants them, can we get them to Wichita?" Challenge accepted. My friend Matt Johnson was the donations developer at Youthville at the time, and I knew he would be excited about such a find. So Pop went down to the front desk and asked the clerk about the TVs. She didn't have the authority to give an answer, but she listened to what he hoped to do with them. And she got excited about the project. So she said, "Let me make some calls and I will get you an answer just as soon as I can." Well, Pop came back to us with a definite maybe. Turns out the hotel manager didn't feel that he had the authority to make the decision. This would have to be the owner's call. And of course, the owner was away on vacation. But the clerk at the front desk was so excited about the potential project that she used the only in emergencies number to call the boss. And because she was excited, he got excited. So we had 8 new to us TVs. The question now is, what are we going to do with them? So it was my turn. I messaged Matt on Facebook telling him about having 8 TVs and was he interested? He was. But his question was, can you guys get them to Wichita or do I need to do something? See, I'm on vacation this week too. Well, by this time it's morning. The clerk has spent the evening trying to catch up with a manager and then the boss, and by the time she gets back to us, we're in the motel restaurant for breakfast. So, every time my phone would ring, I would explain to the people sitting with us what had just transpired. Well, the restaurant was filled with other United Methodists who were also in town for the Uniting Conference. And the closer we got to sealing the deal, the more excited we got. Our voices probably got a bit elevated because pretty soon everybody in the restaurant was waiting for the phone to ring. They all wanted to see if and by now we all were to see if our project was going to fly. Well, Matt had family in Salina that happened to be home that weekend. I think the only United Methodists in Salina who weren't at the conference. This brother-in-law would come over, get the TVs, take them to his place, and they'd be safe till Matt could get there and pick them up to take to Wichita. By Monday morning, the TVs had a new home at Youthville. All of this happened because my father was purposeful. He was filled with his purpose. And his purpose, as he saw it, was to see needs and resources and try to link them up. Pop had the purpose of loving servant leadership. And people sometimes overlook that kind of ministry. And sometimes overlooked it in Pop because he rarely got up front and talked about the mission. He rarely ever preached about the mission of the church. He always thought that Mom and I were better suited to that part. He saw, and he acted with purpose to serve God by serving his children in need. Pop followed Paul's admonition to love. That without love, everything we do is worthless. Because Pop saw the need and the answer to the need. Dozens of people got excited about mission. Half a dozen motel employees heard about Youthville, and Youthville scored 8 new TVs. Purposeful, purpose-filled, loving. In the gospel lesson from Luke this morning, we meet a purposeful, purpose-filled Jesus. He has just proclaimed that he has come to bring good news to the poor, release of the prisoner, sight to the blind, freedom for the oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Now, the people sitting in the synagogue could get excited about such a high purpose, but Jesus didn't stop there. Jesus never stopped there. He went on to say that the blessing of the Messiah would not be limited to those who sat among those gathered in the synagogue. He said that God had also chosen to bless those who lived outside the fellowship. His purpose was to reclaim all of God's children for God and not merely re-anoint those who thought they were already good. When the people heard that their claim on God was not exclusive, they were ticked. Furious. They chased Jesus to the edge of town, right off the cliff, and they were going to push him off. But again, Jesus was purposeful, filled with his purpose. He knew that his purpose was not merely to get a bunch of Nazarenes so riled up that they killed him. His purpose was to die in a specific way, in a specific place, so that through his sacrifice, the whole world might come to know his Father's love and grace. Jesus saw and knew his purpose, and he would not allow himself to be derailed from that purpose. So Luke tells us he walked right through the crowd and went on his way. Jesus would not be diverted from his purpose. And then Jerry talked to us about Jeremiah. Jeremy to his friends. Jeremiah, you got me doing it. Jeremiah was a young man with a purpose. Look again at what God says to this kid. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I anointed you as a prophet to the nations. And at first, Jeremiah tries to get out of this responsibility, this purpose. Sovereign Lord, I don't know how to speak. I am only a child. But the Lord said to me, do not say I am only a child. You must go to everyone I send you to and say what I command you. Don't be afraid of them. I am with you, and I will rescue you. And then the Lord reached out his hand and touched my mouth and said to me, now I have put my words in your mouth. See, today I appoint you over nations and kingdoms, to uproot and tear down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant. Life was hard for the prophet. Being God's prophet was never easy for him or easy on him, but Jeremiah had seen God's purpose for him, and he would not be diverted from his purpose, even when it was hard, even when it was painful, even when it was dangerous. Jeremiah continued to tear down and build up, to destroy and overthrow, to build and plant. God would be with him as long as he was purposeful, as long as he was filled with his purpose. And in the 20th chapter of Jeremiah, we hear him say, each time I speak, I cry aloud. I proclaim violence and destruction, because for me the word of the Lord has resulted in reproach and derision all day long. But if I say I will not remember him or speak any more in his name, then in my heart it becomes like a burning fire shut up in my bones. and I am weary of holding it in, and I cannot endure it. For Jeremiah, God's word is a burning fire within him. He cannot contain it. He cannot hold it in. This is his purpose. Now you know I'm going to quit preaching and go to bed, so here we go. What about you? Are you purposeful? Are you filled with purpose? Here's how you know. John Gardner said it's a rare and high privilege to help people understand the difference they can make, not only in their own lives, but in the lives of others, simply by giving of themselves. Gardner tells of a man who asked the same question of just about every new acquaintance he fell into conversation with. He would ask, what have you done that you believe in and that you're proud of? He never asked the traditional question, what do you do? It was always, what have you done that you believe in and are proud of? It was an unsettling question for people who had built their self-esteem on wealth or family name or high job title. He wasn't a fierce interrogator. He was equally delighted by the woman who said, I'm raising 3 really good kids. By the cabinet maker who said, solid workmanship is my practice. And the woman who said, I started a bookstore and it's the best bookstore in town. The old man said, I don't care how they answer. I just want to put the thought in their minds. They should live their lives in such a way that they have a good answer. Not an answer for me, but for themselves. That's what's important. Purposeful. Christians without goals are a little like Alice in Alice in Wonderland. You remember the conversation between her and the Cheshire Cat, where Alice asked, would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? Well, that depends a good deal on where you want to get to, said the cat. I don't much care where, said Alice. Then it doesn't matter which way you go, said the cat. Are you purposeful? Most of you know that one of Mom's very favorite movies ever was Chariots of Fire. The story of Eric Liddell, a young Christian missionary in training. He was going to go on mission to China. But Eric was also an Olympic class athlete during his college days. And one night he arrived late at a prayer service that he and his sister Jenny were to host. And Jenny was angry that he was late. Not just that he was late because he was late because he'd been to practice. And Eric tried to explain in a way that she would see. And the movie is so beautiful when it takes Eric and Jenny out for a walk on the hills. And Eric says, Jenny, I believe God made me for a purpose, for China. But he also that you do, that causes you to feel God's pleasure rest upon you. That, my friends, is your purpose. I invite you to live a life that is purposeful, that is filled with purpose. The meaning of life, our purpose, is to feel God's pleasure. Are you purposeful?